Tannenbaum, I was around him for a lot when he was here. He's a really thorough guy. Like whatever you think of Mike, his philosophy is every rock every day, right? He's looking under every rock every day. He lives that. And so he will present them with a ton of information.
Hello and welcome to Gangs All here. My name is Ryan Sampson, the host and producer of the show, but he is the Jets beat writer, Brian Costello. Today is Wednesday, November 27th, Thanksgiving Eve. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. The New York Jets do have a football game to play. They are just coming off their bye week. They're going to play the Seattle Seahawks at home on Sunday at 1 o'clock. We'll talk a little bit about that game, the return of Geno Smith. But right now, we're going to break down the 33rd team and what their role is going to play for this Jets franchise future. We'll talk about Aaron Rodgers' comments on McAfee a little bit, and we'll dive into maybe some Thanksgiving food at the end. But before I get to anything else, Coz, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Ryan. How are you? How was the bye week?
Bye week was good. I got engaged. I'll share that to the people.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
When's the wedding?
I've not even gotten that far yet.
Haven't gotten that far yet?
No, just new fresh. But I got to take the time with the Jets not playing and ruining my Sundays to do that. So that was nice.
That's a much better Sunday than you've had ever. By far. But yeah, man, how was your bye week? Well, less eventful than yours. It was fine. It was good. You know, I got to watch some football Sunday, and my son had a banquet for his cross country season that I got to go to because it was the bye week. So that worked out well. But yeah, and of course there was Jets fans there asking me questions, and yeah, so but it was good. It was a good week.
Yeah, and I'm
actually the Joe Douglas news kind of messed up the week a little bit, Ryan.
I was going to say we were live last time. We had that, even though we thought it was going to be a nice quiet week, and we could do a nice easy episode about. All right, maybe we think about where this Jets franchise is going, talk about that a little bit more. But no, the Jets, Woody Johnson decides I'm going to fly into my helicopter and fire Joe Douglas, which is just more of the part of the story that continues to evolve. But that's where I want to start here, Coz, is the future of this franchise. They now are without a GM and a head coach, even though Jeff Ulbrich is the interim. They hired the 33rd team. We get that announcement this week.
Yeah.
That's Mike Tannenbaum. That's Rick Spielman. What is your read and sense on the Jets deciding to go with the 33rd team in an advisory role to help them search for a new GM for this franchise?
Yeah, I think it's a good decision, Ryan, honestly. Especially like the GM job, like when you really sit and think about hiring a GM, it's hard because there's not like a body of evidence for these guys, right? So like, what do? We go, oh, that team is good. Who's the assistant GM for that team, right? But it's like, it's kind of silly because you don't know what the assistant GM does. Like the head coach is hiring, that hiring is hard too, but at least with a head coach, you can sort of see what their system is, and like you see their X's and O's acumen. There's a lot more to that job. That's why hiring one is very hard. But at least you have that as a start, as a base. GM, like there's nothing. And the hardest thing with the GM job is, essentially you get all these different departments that you've had nothing to do with in your life. So like if you hire someone from the scouting side, which is like what Joe Douglas was, what Mike McCagnon was, now they have to learn like contracts, and they have to learn all that aspect, the business side of it. If you hire someone from the contract side of it, they have to learn the scouting side of it. It's like someone, I was talking to an agent, and they said to me, like, do you think you could become the sports editor of the paper tomorrow? And I said, yeah, I actually could become the sports editor. I go, but
watch out, Shaw.
I said, but what you're talking about is me being the editor of the whole operation, like the entire New York Post. Like I couldn't do that. What do I know about the business department? And what do I know about the news department? What do I know about the features department? What do I know about the website? Like that would be like a very, very difficult job for me. So that's a long-winded answer here, but I think the 33rd team can kind of help them with this search in terms of Tannenbaum. I was around him for a lot when he was here. He's a really thorough guy. Like whatever you think of Mike, his philosophy is every rock every day, right? He's looking under every rock every day. He lives that. And so he will present them with a ton of information. He is still very connected to the league. He obviously is on ESPN. He has the 33rd team. He knows a lot of people still. He wasn't that long ago. He was running the Dolphins. The Jets was a long time ago, but the Dolphins isn't that long ago. And then you look at Rick Spielman. He did this for the Commanders last year.
Yep.
So I'm going to guess that, as the Jets whittle their list down to who they're going to interview, there's probably going to be a lot of guys that were on that list for the Commanders last year. So he's already interviewed them. He's already interviewed the coaches with them. So he kind of can give you a head start there. So to me, it gives these guys just, it gives them a starting place. Like, this is ultimately going to be Woody Johnson's decision, and he has to figure out what he wants. I think that's the most difficult thing, Ryan, is like you sit down and you go, what do we want from the next GM and the next head coach? Like, what do you value? Do you value their football mind? Do you value their scouting? Do you value leadership? Do you value, like,
their
ultimately
history?
You want all of it, right? But like, it's hard. And you sit down for however many hour interview and try to figure out the guy. So I do think Tannenbaum and Spielman are connected. And like, somebody might say, like, well, what's the difference between this and when they hired Casserly and Wolf in 2015? Casserly and Wolf had been out of it for a while at that point. And, they tended to bring in guys they knew. And obviously McCagnon worked for Casserly and he got the job. So I do think Mike and Rick are much more connected to today's NFL, and they have a lot of contacts, and they can do a lot of research on these people. And so they can kind of do all the initial stuff and then present this to Woody and Christopher and whoever else is involved with making the ultimate decisions and the interview process. And they also have this data. They have a lot of data and stuff they're going to give them. I don't know how helpful that all will be, but it's information.
Right. I think, before they made this announcement, there was a lot of discussion from from us asking you after the Joe Douglas firing, Coz, where are they going to go? Who's asking, who's going to be the advisor here? Who's going to be helping Woody Johnson search for this new leadership group and bring in a new GM and bring in a new football mind as a head coach as well? And, we get this answer with the 33rd team. I think fans are a little shell shocked when they hear Mike Tannenbaum's name, I think, still, just because of the history there. And but you look at Rick Spielman, and I think you make a great point. I think that's not being discussed enough, is that Rick Spielman did help the Washington Commanders turn their franchise around. I mean, granted, and you've said this a lot.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels helped turn
Jaden Daniels.
I don't want to go there. The piece of Spielman, I'm not saying like, oh my God, he hit a home run with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. Maybe he did. We'll find out in 5 years. But my thing with him is he already knows the players in this, right? So I think for anyone from Ryan Sampson to Brian Costello to Woody Johnson, when you're like, okay, who are the GM candidates? Oh, Borgonzi is the assistant GM in Kansas City. I don't know anything about Mike Borgonzi other than what I read in his bio. Okay. And I can make some calls and get some opinions on him and stuff. I guess Ian Cunningham's a better example. Ian Cunningham's the assistant GM in Chicago. He's going to be a name that's thrown around. Rick Spielman's already sat down with Ian Cunningham. Rick Spielman's already done all the work to vet him and present him to the Washington ownership group. So you're ahead of the game with Spielman. It's only a year ago he did all this. So it's going to be a lot of the same guys that they're looking at. And and he interviewed Ben Johnson last year. Remember, they interviewed him, I think it was a video interview, a virtual interview, and then they flew to Detroit to interview him and Glenn, and Ben Johnson pulled his name out as they were in the air. So remember, that was kind of messy, but he's been down the road already. Like, he's interviewed Aaron Glenn, he's interviewed Ben Johnson. I think that's immensely helpful because, I saw, some people took some shots at Woody of why does he need help doing this? Like, Woody doesn't know about the assistant GM in Chicago, and nor should he. I don't like. I think this is Woody recognizing what he doesn't know, which I think he should be praised for, because we're criticizing him a lot for kind of acting like he knows more about football than he knows with some of the stuff that he's done this season. This is him, and this is him acknowledging what he doesn't know and getting help. And I think the other piece of this that's smart, and I didn't want to see anyone get fired, but I think the idea of moving on from Joe Douglas last week was to get this process started. And I love that idea because now they get all this run-up time, right? Because they really can't do a ton until the season's over because a lot of these guys are employed. But they had meetings this week. They can go through the list. They can kind of figure out what they want. They also can start interviewing a guy like Thomas Dimitroff or Louis Riddick.
Yep.
They want to do him, anyone who's a former GM, and they can get, maybe one of those guys ends up getting the job, or maybe it's just you're getting reps in an interview and you're figuring out what you're looking for by talking to people. And so like they now have this 6 weeks to kind of figure the process out instead of having that first meeting on January 12th or whatever, like other teams are going to do.
No, I completely agree on all points that you just made there. I mean, it does help though to what you say is Spielman's been there. He's interviewed these guys. He knows some of these candidates, and he's going to give a good input to Woody and Mike and be like, yeah, I like that way that guy interviewed. I didn't like what he had to say about his quarterback philosophy. Wasn't really sure about him on the offensive line part. Like those are things that you can bounce off Rick and get those opinions and start building resumes for all these guys, because to what you've said, I don't know anything about Mike Morganzi. You don't know anything about Mike Morganzi.
Yeah.
You would have to actually talk to Andy Reid and Brent Venable and be like, hey, did Mike help you draft X player? What did he say about this scouting of, like those are things that you don't know the inner workings until you actually talk to these guys and see what their coworkers say about him,
Yeah. And the leadership piece of it too is tough to know. And you can get fooled in a 5-hour interview. That happens all the time, but at least they already have if Spielman walked away last year saying that guy will never be able to run an organization, that now. And maybe he's part of a great organization. Maybe he's part of a great franchise that's winning this year, and you would consider him. But if he like got a bad vibe from him last year, you already have that knowledge. So I think I don't really see the downside. And I get the irony that Tannenbaum was fired here. Now he's hiring. Like, I get it. But I do think knowing Mike like I do, he will give his all to this and be very thorough. And for Mike Tannenbaum, clearly he's trying to build a business with the 33rd team. And if he successfully does this and the Jets praise him, another team's going to hire him next year to do it. And then another team's going to hire him, and he's going to keep making money. So he's got a lot riding on this.
No, for sure. And the reason, again, I brought up the Commanders with Spielman is because, and I hear you, the quarterback has always been the greatest.
Yeah, I don't mean to crap on those guys.
No, you're all good.
Great, but
my similarities though is that the Commanders were a franchise in absolute the gutter, just like the Jets are right now. Like they were the heart of despair and they're the most dysfunctional team.
Yeah,
they needed leadership.
They had a new owner though.
Right, they had a new owner, but I'm saying that he trusted on these guys to reset it and find the right guy, and the early returns are there. And granted, they had a great quarterback choice in Jaden Daniels. It's turning out to be good for them so far. He's still only a rookie. There's still more time to figure it out. But there was a guy in Dan Quinn, and maybe that's something, again, this could lead to that those questions later on for the head coaching pick. Do you go with a former head coach that's had success in the league before and choose that person to ultimately be your head coach of this franchise? Because this team has the talent from what we've all discussed. It's just, it's not been put together well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know what a key question I think they need to answer, particularly head coach, but both guys, is like how they've handled adversity, because adversity seems to swallow people whole here. And it was funny. I read a really good story when I kind of started digging in on the search last year in Washington. I think it was John Keim from ESPN. I give him credit. Wrote a really good kind of, we call it a TikTok in the business of like, it breaks down how the search went. And he said with Dan Quinn, one of the biggest questions they asked of their candidates was like, what's the worst thing you had to deal with in your career and how'd you overcome it? So Dan Quinn is 28-3, right? Mm-hmm. We all witnessed Dan Quinn's worst moment as a head coach. Probably the worst moment, one of the worst things, barring some crazy tragic injury, that you could witness on a football field. Like just competition wise, hard to think of that many games that were worse than that. And like they talked about like how did he come back from that, and they were like really impressed with how he answered that. And I think that to me is like this place, like you just know with the Jets, there's going to be times where it's bad, and it gets, the last couple of weeks are an example of this. It gets super, super loud here, super loud. I know people talk about the New York media, and the New York media is part of it, and like we're loud, but there's also like this huge appetite for Jets from the national media. Oh, yeah. And there's a ton of ex-Jets who are on TV that end up talking about the Jets a lot. So like it gets really loud here. I'd be just curious, how candidates have handled adversity and like what they've dealt with. in their career and kind of their approach to that. Because I think that's been an issue here for a lot of people.
That's a great point, and I totally agree that the adversity will hit no matter what, and it is a matter of how you handle it. I think the other aspect that we need to touch on here with the 33rd team and when they're looking for these candidates is how big of a hand is ownership going to have in, say, of the quarterback, the roster? Don't sign this guy. Don't. I'm not talking about what's happened. I'm just saying there is this sense of Woody Johnson, right? And what his future is going to be for his involvement. And he does ultimately have the final say. Do you think that this is a desirable enough job for GM candidates to want to get the interview and be like, yes, I want this Jets GM job because I know I can fix it?
Yeah, it's a big part of it is finding a guy that's going to mesh with Woody. And, my read on like Woody in terms of like managing the roster and stuff, I know that's been a hot topic this year. I think if Woody hires two guys, he's going to have faith in them to execute the vision. He's going to have say in it. And obviously if they decide to pick a quarterback, he's got to be comfortable with that guy and he's got to be comfortable with that pick. He'll be involved in it. But ultimately, I think he will defer to the football guys, where Woody, I think, if Woody was very frustrated this season. Clearly, he's fired two guys. I think that's where Woody starts stepping in and going like, "Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, what about this? What about this?" And it's been like that for the last, I'd say probably a year, maybe a little more. Like he's been frustrated, and I think that's where he starts interjecting a little more of his football opinions. So I do think if you come here, I think he's gonna have faith. And then like the big question is he even gonna be here? Is he gonna be in England or somewhere else? That obviously he'd still have say, but he's not going to be worrying about who's playing free safety if he's in England, I don't think. So but it's definitely, if I was a candidate, like I want to get a lot of information about Woody and I want to know, is he going to, what is his involvement going to be? But I do think Woody desperately just wants to hire somebody who has the answers. And I think and can find him a quarterback. I know that's what he's like really, 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 really wants right now.
Well, you've already teed up now the next part of this show, the Aaron Rodgers factor, right? So we know that there is still money due to him next year. They could choose non-guaranteed, right? But they would still be a cap hit next year if they cut him.
Yeah.
39 million, I believe, next year, right?
So 49 million if they cut him.
49 million.
Out, and then they could do a post June 1st designation, which means you carry the cap until June 1st. He'll be gone, but you carry the cap till June 1st. After June 1st, it would be split between 25 and 26. So you could reduce the number a little bit.
So we've seen the Denver Broncos. They decided to just cut Russell Wilson, eat the cap hit. We've seen other teams are starting to do this too. For what we've heard from Aaron Rodgers speaking on McAfee yesterday, saying, I don't know my future. I don't even know if I'm playing in 2025. And if I do want to play in 2025, my first choice would be the Jets. But again, he addressed the Olberg factor, the GM being fired. Coz, we're only in week 13 still, believe it or not. And Rodgers, we've heard the injury stuff. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be the quarterback of the Jets in 2025? That's the ultimate question.
Yeah, I don't think so, Ryan. I just can't compute it in my brain of how it would work. Like, if you're coming in here as a new GM and coach, I think you're going to want to establish something long-term here. Aaron Rodgers, best case scenario is next season, then you're moving on after next season. So I guess you could say, oh, well, he's the bridge quarterback and maybe you draft someone behind him but I don't know. Is Aaron Rodgers really going to want to learn a new offense? Is Aaron Rodgers it's not going to be like all in next year? Go for it. Like I just can't I can't picture that. They just did that, and I think a new coach you're going to have to kind of make roster alterations in terms of systems. Is this guy going to come in? Are they going to run a 3-4 defense, and they're going to have to get people for that? Are they going to change the offense? It's just hard for me to imagine it working. I feel like there's too many moving pieces. But you can't rule it out. I guess if somebody comes in and says he's our best option, I guess it is. But off of the first 11 games, it's hard to say that. Right? Is he giving you much more than if you started Tyrod Taylor next year at quarterback from what you've seen in 11 games?
I would say probably not.
No, and then he comes with a lot of extra
Baggage.
baggage. Yeah. So, look, if he plays lights out the last 6 games, maybe somebody gets convinced. I think it's dangerous. This is the dangerous time of year where you get fooled by things you see. It's like September baseball and December football. Like, you got to be careful. It's hard for me to see him being the quarterback next year, but I wouldn't completely rule it out.
All right. So we wouldn't completely rule it out. I think that might be it is the quarterback question for that GM candidate that you're going to hire.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that position? Are we going in all in? Like, if we have a high top 8, top 10 draft pick, do you believe in this quarterback class? What do you feel about Rodgers? How would you handle that situation? Do we clean cut there and just eat the cap? What's your plan with Tyrod Taylor? There's just so many unknowns here. And I would really hope that Mike T and Spielman are telling Woody, these are the questions you need to lay out for these GM candidates in order to feel comfortable hiring that next person and getting the answers you want.
Yeah. I don't think Woody needs help in that department.
Okay.
I think Woody knows the ask about the quarterback. Like, I think it's going to getting Woody to go off the quarterback is going to be what Mike and Rick have to do. Is like, okay, Woody, we know you want a quarterback. Like, that can't be the entire focus here. We have to know their entire plan. What's their leadership style? How they do this. But yeah, I mean, the quarterback is obviously huge part of this. It's people have asked me what's gone wrong here and that kind of thing.
How long you got?
I know, but it really boils down to they have not got the quarterback right. It's like they just the 1 year like that was decent. Fitz played his ass off and they had a great year, but
But that was also the year former Jet quarterback's going to be coming into town where Geno Smith got punched in the face.
Yeah, and honestly, Geno would have been the quarterback. Like, I know people kind of rewrite that history of like, oh, Geno, like Fitz might have beat him out. Fitz wasn't beating him out. Like, Todd liked Geno. Todd was going to start Geno, and it all changed. So yeah, it's but they just they have not gotten that quarterback right. That's the first line in the story.
That is the first line in the story. I think one other element, we've heard with the Aaron Rodgers factor is his relationship with Chris Johnson, right? The other Johnson brother. And you've already alluded to, Woody's got to set a leadership group up here before he ultimately decides whether or not he's going to London or if he takes another ambassador role with this new presidency. Is the relationship with Rodgers and Chris Johnson going to have a factor here in Rodgers' future with the Jets?
That's a good question. My instinct is no, because I think Woody's going to be the one still in charge here until, if he gets, last time he left in August in 2017 when he left. So I think there's enough runtime time where he's going to be making decisions. I don't think Chris is going to be making those decisions. Chris and Aaron do have a good relationship. Chris actually in that remember the big trip to Malibu, was actually 3 planes. We all focused on one plane. There was 3 planes. There was a plane that carried Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas, Jaime Elhai. There was a plane that carried Woody Johnson, and there was a plane that carried Chris Johnson. They came from 3 different parts of the country, right? One was from New Jersey, then one was from Florida, one was from Colorado. Chris Johnson arrived before the other guys, and he went to Aaron's house, and he sat with Aaron. They clicked over some shared love of an author at the time. Chris Johnson is a really easy guy to talk to, Ryan, and he's a very down-to-earth. Sometimes NFL owners and billionaires, I don't know how many billionaires you've talked to, they're a little different than you and I. And sometimes it can be hard to have a conversation with a billionaire. Like, Chris Johnson is as down to earth as it gets. And I think he's clicked with Aaron, but I don't ultimately think that's going to be a major factor in whether I think it'll be a major factor for Aaron staying. Like, if it's Aaron's choice somehow, and he knows Chris Johnson is taking over in August, I think Aaron would be very happy about that. I don't think it goes the other way though, where Chris is that's my guy. We're sticking with him.
One final thing about the Rodgers before we actually talk about this game a little bit.
There's a game?
Yeah, there is a game.
I thought the season was over.
No,
coaching and GM search.
I've never gone through something like this, Coz, where we're talking about so much GM and front office and head coach candidates for 7 or 8 weeks of the regular season.
Yes.
It's crazy. Yeah. If you were to place a bet, and I know I'm a gambling man. I don't think you are. But if you were to place a bet, is Aaron Rodgers wearing a Jets uniform next season with this franchise?
Oh, I bet no. Yeah, I think
No.
the safest safe. I definitely. I mean, I think the odds are low that he's wearing a Jets uniform next year, just because of all the stuff I laid out. I think you start with the offensive coordinator piece.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what did they do to lure him here? They hired his basically offensive coordinator of his choice, and like I just like you can't hire anyone for Aaron Rodgers at this point. So now, if like let's say they get the dream candidate, they get Ben Johnson, and is he going to learn Ben Johnson's offense at this point? I just don't know for one season. Like it feels like to me, and I some of the guys that break down tape on TV and stuff say like it seems like Aaron's running his own offense a lot of times. Like so, yeah, I just can't fathom him going like, yeah, all right, send me the iPad. I can't wait to learn a new offense at 41 years old. Like I just, and that's not a slight on Aaron. I think that'd be tough for anybody. Like look at what Brady went through in Tampa Bay. Right, he got a tough time learning Bruce Arians.
Won a Super Bowl,
but remember at the middle of the season they changed the offense to better suit Brady. Like they recognized they were butting heads, and they changed the offense, and then they won the Super Bowl.
They started running the ball more with Leonard Fournette. Yeah. That's what helped them succeed too.
Yeah, but they also
Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski.
They stopped chucking it down the field, which was like what Arians wanted to do, and Brady didn't. So like it's tough to learn an offense. I think. At that, when you've been doing it for 20 years, and especially Aaron's basically been in two offenses for most of his career.
Yep. Unless they bring in Mike McCarthy, and then maybe Aaron Rodgers is coming back. But Jerry Jones said don't rule out that Mike McCarthy could be up for an extension with the Cowboys.
Yep.
So yeah, there is a game this week, guys. Jets Seahawks. Seahawks are favored -2. The return of Geno factor here a little bit. I want to discuss this with you. Is it simple with it just went wrong in that 2015 season when he got punched? Like, is there any mind in your thought, like a what if of Geno if he never got hit by IK?
Because I've heard Geno say this in interviews like the last couple of years. Like Geno had to grow up. Like the biggest thing that held Geno back with the Jets was his immaturity, and that's what led to the IK altercation ultimately. Like was. Just didn't give him 600, like just give him $600, Geno. And like, what are you doing? Right. But he was a 23, 24-year-old. And sometimes when you're 20 and 24, you act like an idiot. And that's part of the job. And so he was just immature here. And I think there's something, Ryan, to be said for being humbled, and I think Geno got humbled by what happened here. And then he didn't have success with the Giants. And he went to the Chargers. And I think I think sometimes when you're drafted in the first or second round, you were a star in college and you were a star in high school and you were a star when you were in 8th grade, like all of a sudden you struggle. It's hard to deal with. And I think getting humble, I think we see it like Mekhi Becton is another example right now. You watched the game the other night. Mekhi Becton, like when he was here, was like, oh, he's going to play right tackle. And Mekhi tweets, I am a left tackle. Now he's playing guard, and it's guard because like Mekhi got humbled. Like I think Mekhi got humbled, and he saw like, oh crap, like if I don't turn this around, I'm gonna be out of the league. And give him credit, he recognized it. But I think Geno's grown up. Geno always had the talent. I mean, I can remember his rookie minicamp. He threw the ball like as well as anyone I've ever seen throw a football. Like he was incredible. I remember like I was like, this is it for Sanchez. When like there's no chance, because remember there was going to be the competition. I was like, Sanchez doesn't have a chance because when they see this kid throw this ball like this, he's going to be the quarterback. And like he had his moments here, they were fleeting. I mean that Atlanta game is the one big one that comes to mind. But he led some big wins here. And I mean, we've covered a lot of different young quarterbacks, and Geno had his moments. I just think he needed to mature, and I think that's the biggest thing. And getting humbled, I do think helps to some of these guys.
Yeah, it's just when you hear the Mekhi Becton, you see the Geno Smith, you see Sam Darnold flourishing a little bit. It's a little discouraging as a Jets fan. It's like you play the what if game, right? My hope and prayer, because that's all I have at this point, is that they can find the right leadership group that will allow guys to like talk to them and say, like, Mekhi, you're not a left tackle. we think you're better off as a right guard and you can play better here. It didn't work out the first year as a left tackle. Geno, we need you to sit for a couple of years and learn to sit behind a veteran quarterback and learn how to eat that humble pie a little bit.
Here's the hard part, though, Ryan, with that is you have to have equity. So you have to have success, right? So Mekhi Becton here, he could go like, screw Robert Saleh. What has he ever won? Like Keith Carter, the heck with him. He goes to Philadelphia, and it's like, okay, like they just went to a Super Bowl a few years ago. Jeff Stoutland is one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. I'd say him and Bill Callahan are one and 1A. So he walks in already with that respect. He's not a draft pick there anymore. So he's sort of just, you're a guy just signed to a 1-year deal. Like, you got to prove it. It's hard to do that like in this organization. And like for Geno, Pete Carroll was there when he was there. So Pete, it's hard. There's a sense of entitlement, I think, when you're on the team that drafted you sometimes. And also this organization, they just haven't had guys who have clout, and it's hard to find that. And the only thing that builds that is winning.
Right. And I think if you brought it, like, I know you say like Mike Vrabel's not, he's the guy for me again. Like, if you brought him
Vrabel
in,
has that. He's the one guy who's in there. I mean, obviously we're going to put Belichick aside. Like,
right.
He ain't coming here, but Vrabel's the one guy that has that clout. I agree with you.
That's my dream. Again, that's my dream scenario, is that you can find someone like a Vrabel if it's not him. But again, I don't know who that is, but just to be able to build these players up and show them the way of where you can be successful and give them a little bit of humble pie. It's crazy that that's the word that's being thrown around still with this team. Anything else, Coz, about this game that stands out to you? I know the Jets.
One other former Jet I want to highlight is Leonard Williams. I don't know if you watched the game Sunday.
I did. He had 2.5 sacks, right?
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Holy crap! He looked like Warren Sapp. Like he played his ass off. Like, and I immediately looked at the stats, and he only has 5 sacks on the season, so it's not like it's been there all season, but he looked great. So we're talking about former Jets. Leonard was a guy who performed well here. Like he's still doing it. So.
Yeah, he is.
Receiver wise, I think Metcalf and Smith and Jigba. Smith and Jigba is having a really good year, so I think that's going to be interesting. To see how the coverage does against them. It's going to be a good test for the defense for sure.
Yeah, and even against the run game. I mean, the Seahawks don't have a dominating offensive line, but they have a hell of a 1-2 running back in Walker and Charbonnet. How are they? I thought they did actually pretty well against Jonathan Taylor and bottling him up the previous week. But they couldn't again stop Anthony Richardson on what I tell you on those read option plays that the Colts knew they had a package ready to go in the red zone.
Hey, yeah, but the Anthony Richardson on third down was the holy crap. He made some great throws, and the Jets coverage was rough. So
I'd feel remiss if I didn't bring up to you, what did you think about Sauce Gardner on that key third down, that final drive? The fact that he kind of was pointing fingers at the safety there. And yeah, I know it's playing zone, and I know that he hopes that he wants the safety to be over there in coverage and help. I've heard Bart Scott's breakdown, which I thought was really good. I didn't like that moment from Sauce. It's been a rough year for him, man.
Yeah, I think he's frustrated. That's the pointing thing. I asked somebody who I respect, and to break it down for me, and they said it was Jalen Mills. They did not agree with Bart Scott's breakdown at all. They said Sauce did nothing wrong there. Now, I talked to somebody else who said it was Sauce. Like it seems like we don't quite know exactly the assignments. I think it's called the Palms coverage that they were in. But whatever, Sauce hasn't had a good year. I think he's very frustrated at this point. So I thought he handled it after the game well, and he wasn't, didn't point fingers then. But yeah, it's this, and this is going to be another test. And Ryan, can they get a freaking interception? It's like Saleh was the head coach the last time they had an interception. Think about how long ago that was. We're almost 2 months since they've had an interception. And it's funny. I keep looking at the stats and being like, man, they got to be the worst team in the league in interceptions. Oh, nope. The Giants only have 1. So New York football is just insane right now.
It really is. It really is. Finally, before we do predictions and over-unders, can this Jets offense get some kind of momentum going? Because against the Colts, that first half was ugly. before they got into the second half, they were able to generate some stuff. Or at the end of the first half, they were able to generate a touchdown. Breece Hall looked like Breece Hall, which was nice at moments.
Yeah. But now I don't know if you saw the news. Like, we're recording this Wednesday morning. Breece isn't practicing Wednesday. He has a knee, tweaked his knee. I mean, Ulbrich made it sound like it wasn't that serious, but we've all been through this before where it doesn't sound serious on Wednesday, and then all of a sudden he's not playing Sunday. When I saw they signed Bam Knight on Tuesday, I was kind of like, oh, what's going on there? So clearly, we're going to have to see if Breece is 100% Sunday.
Yeah, we will. And you still have Braylon Allen. You've drafted a bunch of running backs this year. Ultimately, what are you looking for in this offense with Rodgers and company?
Just a complete game. Like, they've had halves, they've had drives, but like, can they just put together a complete game where they don't look inept for a long stretch of time? I do think Rodgers is healthier than he's been. I know that's been a topic of conversation lately. I think any discussion of him like not having scans and all that stuff was probably happening in early October. Like that was when he was really banged up.
Right.
He's practicing fully now. Like that to me is the truth, right? Like, you guys can say whatever they want. If guys want, I'm healthy, but like the truth comes out. If he wasn't healthy, they wouldn't be practicing him on Wednesdays. And they started like 3 weeks ago practicing him on Wednesdays. So I think he's healthier than he's been. Can the offense just function and just get like a rhythm going and operate? And that's number one. And number two is, can they have explosive plays? Because they have no explosion right now at all. Their explosion is a dump off pass to Breece and he runs 50 yards, or a slant to Devontae and he gets 30 yards. Can they actually push the ball down the field? Can they break a run for 80 yards? Like, whatever it is, like, just get explosive. Like, you watch the Eagles Sunday night and it's like, holy crap, look at this. Like,
it's a different sport. It's a different
sport.
Or
like even the Commanders, like, they one play 86-yard touchdown. Like, it's just like, you can't live with, not that the Jets are doing this either, but you can't live with it like 12, 14 play drives all the time. Like, you need some 1 or 2, 3 play drives where you bang a big one. So those are my two things. Just putting together a complete game. Can they be explosive, offensively?
Yeah, it's been the theme of the season for not having any explosive plays and not pushing the ball down.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it too the other day around their first drives. Are incredible. Like, just incredible when you look at it. I did it in my newsletter. I posted every drive, 2 field goals all season on first drives. It's just remarkable.
Remarkably bad. All right, let's do some predictions and over-unders. Coz, last week in the props, you went 2 weeks ago. You went 2 and 3. I didn't count the Sauce Gardner, even though you said you had him for an interception, but 2 and 3.
I was wrong again.
It's okay. On the season, you are 39 and 32. So you're coming back. You're still at plus 7 units, if that makes sense.
I got to stop picking overs for the Jets offense. That's what I got to stop doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I keep thinking Rodgers is going to have some big game at some point.
It's just, you know what? You had the touchdowns. I'll give you credit on that.
He finds a way to get the touchdowns.
No, yeah, he can't do it. But so anyway, let's talk about some props here. I got Aaron Rodgers at 218.5 pass yards, 1.5 passing touchdowns. Under yards, over in touchdowns. That has been the theme for Mr. Rodgers.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay away from Breece Hall because I don't want you to say over under because we're not sure about him. But let's talk about for the Seahawks because they haven't listed anything else for the Jets. Seahawks, Jackson Smith Njigba, 63.5 receiving yards.
Over.
Okay. And then how about his partner DK Metcalf, 65.5 receiving yards?
Over.
Wow. Okay. That would probably mean Geno hits his over on 241.5 pass yards. I'm not going to ask you about that one. The final one for the Seahawks, I have Kenneth Walker, 62.5 rushing yards.
I'll go under on that one.
Okay. Maybe the Jets rush defense is still putting together some solid games. As for the prediction, Coz, you picked the Jets to beat the Colts. So now you are, you are 6 and 5. I picked the Colts to win. So now I've gotten up to 4 and 7. What is your prediction for this Jets game? They are underdogs by 2 points only against this Seahawks team.
I am going to pick the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are in first place, close division. They've got a lot to play for here. I'm just imagining the Jets watching all these stories about how the front office is focused on next year. The ownership has already turned the page and they're hiring people for next year. It's hard to imagine this team just staying motivated. It's not to say they won't win any more games, but this one's a tough one for me. I think Geno is going to come in fired up. A lot to play for. I think he's going to be excited to be back here. Stick it to the Jets. So I'm going to go Seahawks 30, Jets 20. I'll go 10-point game. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think they'll pull away at the end. Ryan, my question for you is, what do you think the crowd will be like Sunday?
Similar to what the Giants crowd was last weekend, where there was no one in the stands.
No one there.
It's just.
I thought that might be a decent number. I thought like Thanksgiving weekend, maybe people, looking for something to do. People home from college or visiting home might go. I don't think is the weather supposed to be okay? I haven't looked.
I haven't looked at the weather yet, to be frank.
It's cold, but I don't think it's raining. So yeah, I thought that might be an okay crowd for this one.
My advice: go out, enjoy yourself, like I did last weekend. Go have a nice weekend with your family.
Are you telling people to go get engaged?
If you're thinking about it, go do it, because you're not going to be missing much on Sunday. Because I agree with you guys. I got Seahawks winning this game 31-27 over the Jets. I do think the Jets offense can get something going a little bit against the Seahawks defense, even though they are actually pretty good on the back end. But yeah, I got the Seahawks winning this one and covering the 2. Before we end this show, I got to ask you, Coz. Thanksgiving side dishes are always a big thing, especially in my household. We make 4 different stuffings.
4 different stuffings.
4 different stuffings, man. What is your go-to side dish? What is, no matter what, you got to have the most on your plate when you're putting your plate together?
Yeah, my mother's stuffing is the best for me. Yeah, I think now I'm going to my sister's tomorrow. I think my sister or my niece make it now, but it was my mother's recipe. But it's actually my grandmother's recipe. So, but yeah, the stuffing is number 1 for sure. Give me the 4 types of stuffing.
So you got the bird stuffing, right?
That's the one that's actually cooked in the bird?
Cooked in the bird, yep.
Yeah, okay.
So then we make a second stuffing that's just plain, because some of my family doesn't like the turkey flavor in the stuffing itself. Okay. Then we make a sweet Italian sausage stuffing and a hot Italian sausage stuffing, 2 different kinds. So we have 4 different stuffings on the table for us.
Sweet Italian sausage and hot Italian. That's tough, Brian.
Well, it depends. If some people, the sausage is nice and it's a good flavor in there, but some people don't like hot. So that's why we have 2 different ones there too. So yeah, we always have 4 different types of stuffings at our household.
I'll give you a little press box, not trivia, but like little press box history. At the old Yankee Stadium, Ryan, they used to have in the press box, they used to have a little concession stand that sold sausage and like pretzels like that. I don't think they sold anything else, but like you get a hot or sweet sausages. I ate a lot of sausage at Yankee Stadium back in the day, and they were like, it was like $1 or something. It was so cheap. It was like, yeah, those are the days.
Those are the days that you reminisce on. Are you a gravy on everything type guy, or does it have to be just on like certain things?
Yeah, everything pretty much.
Same.
Yeah, I put gravy on everything. Yeah.
Coz, happy Thanksgiving, man. Enjoy it. Thank you. We don't have a Black Friday game this year, which is nice. We were worried about that could be a potential every year thing.
Is Tim Boyle going to play for the Giants at some point?
Man, that's going to be something. Tommy Cutlets tomorrow, hopefully playing for the Giants. But yeah, but we get to watch it and we get to enjoy it and not have to stress about it.
God.
Coz, you're the man. Enjoy all the food. And we're looking forward to your coverage on this weekend, man, for the game.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.